The cafeteria of Nexus Academy buzzed with the multilingual chatter of a dozen species, but Nora Blackwood sat in her usual corner, hoping to remain invisible. Her fingers traced the edge of her translation tablet, where she'd been working on her thesis about the emotional nuances in Krillian vocal patterns. The irony wasn't lost on her. She could understand the subtle emotional inflections of alien languages better than she could navigate simple human social interactions. Well, what have we here? The deep, rumbling voice made her stomach clench. She didn't need to look up to know that Vextal had found her again. The massive Krillian towered over her table, his gray, rock-like skin gleaming under the harsh cafeteria lights. His 4 arms were crossed in a display of dominance that would have impressed his ancestors on the mining worlds, but here it just made other students look away uncomfortably. Nora had studied enough about Krillian culture to know that his posture indicated both superiority and predatory intent. Still hiding in corners like a scared little rodent? Vextal continued, his voice carrying easily across the now quieting cafeteria. Humans. Always so small, so weak. I heard your species can't even lift proper weights without those mechanical suits. Nora's cheeks burned, but she kept her eyes fixed on her tablet. She'd learned that engaging only made things worse. Around them, other students pretended to be absorbed in their meals or conversations. A table of Selenites, tall, graceful beings with silver skin and telepathic abilities, could have easily intervened with their mental influence. A group of Nexarian scholars, known for their wisdom and diplomatic skills, continued their academic debate as if nothing was happening. Even the normally justice-minded Avalon students seemed to find their food particularly fascinating. I asked you a question, rodent, Vextal growled, reaching down with one of his lower arms to snatch her tablet away. What's this garbage? Emotional resonance in Krillian vocal patterns. He laughed, a sound like boulders grinding together. You think you can understand us? You soft, pathetic creatures don't have the capacity to comprehend superior species. Nora finally looked up, her hazel eyes bright with unshed tears but also with defiance. I'm just studying. I'm not bothering anyone. Not bothering anyone. Vextal's voice rose, drawing more attention. Your entire species is a bother. Weak, emotional, always needing protection. The academy only admitted humans out of pity. The silence in the cafeteria was deafening now. Nora could feel dozens of eyes on her, but not one being moved to help. She was alone, as always. That's enough. The voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension like a blade. Nora turned to see a young man approaching their table with casual confidence. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and storm-gray eyes that seemed to assess everything with calculated precision. She recognized him vaguely, Marcus Stone, one of the few humans in the advanced engineering program. Vextal's head turned, all 4 eyes focusing on the newcomer. Another rodent comes to play hero? How amusing. Marcus didn't stop walking until he was standing directly beside Nora's table, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something clean and masculine that made her unexpectedly aware of his presence. He didn't look at her, though. His attention was entirely focused on Vextal. Vextal of the Krillian Mining Collective, 3rd-generation asteroid worker, admitted to the Academy on a labor scholarship, Marcus said conversationally, as if he were discussing the weather. Your academic standing is 2.3 out of 4.0. You're failing advanced geological engineering and barely passing basic astrophysics. The Krillian's gray skin darkened to almost black, a sign of anger in his species. How dare you? Whereas Nora here, Marcus continued, finally glancing down at her with a slight smile that made her heart skip, is ranked 3rd in her class with a 3.8 GPA. Her research on xenolinguistics has been cited by professors in 4 different departments. She speaks 7 languages fluently and is currently working on her doctorate thesis as an undergraduate. The cafeteria was so quiet that Nora could hear the hum of the environmental systems. Marcus picked up her tablet from Vextal's loosened grip and handed it back to her, his fingers brushing hers for just a moment longer than necessary. So tell me, Vextal, Marcus said, his voice still calm but carrying an edge of steel, who exactly is the superior being here? The bully who uses physical intimidation to mask academic inadequacy, or the brilliant linguist who's advancing interspecies understanding? Vextal's forearms flexed, his massive frame trembling with rage. You think your words protect you, human? I could crush you both. Could you? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. I mean, physically, probably. You outweigh both of us combined. But intellectually? Academically? Socially? He gestured around the cafeteria, where other students were now watching with obvious interest rather than studied indifference. Right now, every being in this room is watching you prove exactly what Nora's research suggests, that Krillian aggression patterns are inversely related to cognitive processing ability. Several students actually chuckled at that, including some of the Selenites. Nora stared at Marcus in amazement. He'd turned the entire dynamic on its head without raising his voice or making a single threat. Vextal's skin color shifted again, this time to a mottled gray-green that Nora recognized as embarrassment mixed with confusion. This isn't over, he stammered, clearly out of his depth in a battle of wits. Oh, but it is, Marcus replied pleasantly. Because if you continue to harass Nora, I'll make sure everyone knows that your scholarship is contingent on maintaining a 2.5 GPA, and you're currently at 2.3. Academic probation would mean losing your spot here and returning to the asteroid mines. I doubt your family would be pleased about wasting this opportunity. The threat was delivered with such casual confidence that it took a moment for the full implication to sink in. Vextal took a step back, his aggression deflating like air from a punctured balloon. How do you know all that? Nora whispered, looking up at Marcus with wonder. I make it my business to know things, he replied, never taking his eyes off Vextal. Especially when they concern people worth protecting. The Krillian glared at them both for another moment, then turned and stalked away, his heavy footsteps echoing in the still quiet cafeteria. Gradually, conversations resumed, but Nora noticed that several students were looking at her with new interest rather than pity. Marcus pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. So, emotional resonance in Krillian vocal patterns? That sounds fascinating. Mind if I ask you about it? Nora blinked, still processing what had just occurred. You want to know about my research? I'm an engineer, he said with that slight smile that was already becoming dangerously attractive to her. I work with alien tech all day, but I never really considered the linguistic programming aspects. How do emotional inflections affect command processing in Krillian systems? As Nora began to explain her work, she found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks. Marcus listened with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions that showed he was really paying attention. Other students gradually migrated toward their table, drawn by the lively discussion. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Nora Blackwood wasn't invisible. And it was all because one person had decided she was worth defending. Thank you, she said quietly when there was a brief lull in the conversation. Marcus met her eyes, and she saw something there that made her pulse quicken. Thank you for giving me a reason to finally talk to you. I've been trying to figure out an excuse for weeks. You have? Nora, he said, leaning slightly closer, you're brilliant, beautiful, and passionate about your work. Trust me, you're worth a lot more than protection. As her cheeks flushed pink and she smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months, Nora realized that sometimes the best defense wasn't silence or invisibility. Sometimes it was simply having someone who believed you deserved to be heard. The conversation flowed around them as other students joined in, but Nora found herself focused entirely on the gray eyes across from her, wondering how one moment of courage could change everything. The medical bay of Nexus Academy hummed with the soft blue glow of selenite healing crystals and the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Zara Chinokafor pressed her palms against the observation window, watching the emergency team work on the shuttle accident victim with growing frustration. 3 days into her xenobiology rotation, and she was already questioning everything she'd learned about interspecies medical cooperation. "Step back, student," Kethera commanded without looking up from her patient. The selenite healer's silver skin gleamed under the medical lights, her elongated fingers moving with practiced precision over the scanning devices. "This is beyond your primitive understanding." Zara bit back her first response and tried diplomacy instead. "With respect, Healer Kethera, the patient's cellular regeneration rate suggests he might benefit from human-specific protocols. I've studied the compatibility charts." "Human protocols," Kethera interrupted, her melodic voice dripping with disdain, "are crude approximations of true healing arts. We have been mending bodies for millennia while your species was still discovering fire." The patient on the bio bed stirred, a low groan escaping his lips. Finn O'Sullivan, according to his medical chart, a third-year pilot who'd crashed his training shuttle during a routine navigation exercise. His dark hair was matted with sweat, and even unconscious, his face was etched with pain. The shuttle's engine had exploded on impact, leaving him with severe burns across his left side and internal injuries that the standard alien treatments weren't addressing properly. "His pain receptors are still firing," Zara observed, checking the neural scanner. "The selenite healing frequencies aren't calibrated for human brain chemistry. If we adjusted the resonance by—" "Silence," Kethera snapped, her large, opalescent eyes flashing with irritation. "Your kind's neural patterns are chaotic and unpredictable. We treat him as we would any carbon-based life form. If he survives, he survives. If not—" She shrugged elegantly. "Natural selection." Zara's hands clenched into fists. "He's not an experiment. He's a person." "He is human," Kethera replied as if that explained everything. "Your species' emotional volatility makes you poor patients. Always fighting the healing process, always demanding explanations, always believing you know better than trained medical professionals." "Maybe because we do know our own biology better than anyone else," Zara muttered, but the selenite had already turned away. For the next hour, Zara watched helplessly as Finn's condition slowly deteriorated. The alien medical staff performed their procedures with cold efficiency, but there was no warmth, no genuine care in their ministrations. They treated him like a broken machine rather than a living being in pain. When the shift change came, Zara made her decision. She waited until the corridor was empty, then slipped into the treatment room with a portable medical kit she'd borrowed from the human dormitory's emergency supplies. Finn was awake now, his green eyes clouded with pain and medication. He tried to focus on her as she approached his bedside. "Hey there," she said softly, checking his vitals on the human-compatible scanner she'd brought. "I'm Zara. I'm going to help you feel better, okay? Shouldn't you be asking permission from the Ice Queen?" Finn managed, his voice hoarse. Despite his condition, there was a spark of humor in his eyes that made Zara's heart skip. "Probably," she admitted, already adjusting the pain management settings on his 4. "But she's more interested in proving human inferiority than actually healing you." Finn's laugh turned into a cough. "Story of my life. Always the wrong species in the wrong place." He studied her face as she worked. "You're risking your residency for me." "Why?" Zara paused, meeting his gaze. "Because no one should suffer just because they're different. And because—" She hesitated, surprised by her own honesty. "Because you matter. Every person matters." As she worked, adjusting his treatment protocols and introducing human-specific healing compounds from her kit, Finn found himself watching her with growing fascination. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her brown eyes were intense with concentration. There was something about her competence, her quiet determination to do what was right despite the consequences, that drew him in. "Tell me about yourself," he said, needing distraction from the pain. "What made you want to be a healer?" Zara's hands never stopped moving as she recalibrated his pain management system. "My grandmother. She was a traditional healer back on Earth, worked with both conventional medicine and alternative therapies. She always said that healing was about seeing the whole person, not just the symptoms. Smart woman. The smartest. Zara smiled, and Finn noticed how it transformed her entire face. She would have loved this place, all the different approaches to medicine. Though she would have had some choice words for Kethera's bedside manner. What would she think of you breaking rules to help a stubborn pilot? She'd probably say I was finally learning the most important lesson. Zara finished adjusting his fore and moved to check his burns. That sometimes doing what's right matters more than doing what's expected. Over the next several hours, as Zara continued her unauthorized treatment, Finn began to improve noticeably. His pain levels decreased, the inflammation in his burns subsided, and his internal injury started healing at an accelerated rate. More importantly, they talked. Finn told her about growing up on a mining station, where humans were always the newest arrivals, always having to prove themselves worthy of respect. Zara shared stories of her medical training, the constant struggle to be taken seriously in a field dominated by species with supposedly superior healing abilities. You know what's funny? Finn said during one of Zara's late-night visits. I've been treated by doctors all over the galaxy, and none of them ever bothered to ask what hurt. They just assumed they knew. Pain is subjective, Zara replied, checking his latest scans with satisfaction. Every species experiences it differently. The fact that most medical protocols ignore that is frankly barbaric. Is that your professional opinion, Dr. Chinokafor? I'm not a doctor yet, she protested, though she was pleased by the title. You are to me. Finn caught her hand as she reached for his chart, their fingers intertwining. You saved my life, Zara. Not just medically, but, you made me feel human again. Worth saving. The warmth of his touch sent electricity up her arm, and Zara found herself leaning closer. Finn. I know, he said softly. This is complicated. You're my healer, I'm your patient, we're different career tracks. And if Kethera finds out what I've been doing, I'll be expelled, Zara added, though she made no move to pull away from him. Then we'll have to make sure she doesn't find out. But of course, she did. Kethera discovered Zara's unauthorized treatments during the morning rounds, when Finn's impossibly improved condition couldn't be explained by standard selenite healing protocols. Her silver skin darkened to pewter with rage as she confronted Zara in front of the entire medical staff. You arrogant little primitive, she hissed, her melodic voice turned harsh with fury. You contaminated my patient with your crude human chemistry. You could have killed him. I saved him, Zara replied steadily, though her heart was racing. His recovery rate is 3 times faster than your projections. Irrelevant. You violated every protocol, ignored proper chain of command, and demonstrated exactly why humans have no business in advanced medicine. Kethera turned to address the gathered staff. This is what happens when we lower our standards to accommodate inferior species. They think their emotions and instincts are superior to millennia of proven science. Actually, Finn's voice cut through the tension, I think they might be. Everyone turned to see him sitting up in bed, looking remarkably healthy for someone who'd been near death just days before. His green eyes were clear and bright, focused intently on Kethera. I've been conscious for most of my treatment, he continued, his pilot's training evident in his calm, authoritative tone. I experienced both your methods and Zara's. Yours treated my symptoms. Hers treated me. The patient is hardly qualified to, Kethera began. The patient, Finn interrupted, is the only one qualified to judge his own experience. Your healing crystals are impressive, your technology is advanced, but you never once asked what I needed. Zara did. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, moving with surprising ease. She didn't just heal my body. She listened to my concerns, explained what she was doing, treated me like a person instead of a problem to be solved. Kethera's expression shifted from anger to uncertainty. The protocols exist for a reason. Do they? Finn asked. Because from where I'm lying, it seems like your protocols are designed to make you feel superior rather than make patients feel better. A murmur ran through the assembled medical staff. Several of the younger healers were nodding thoughtfully, while the senior staff looked uncomfortable. Furthermore, Finn continued, standing fully now, if you want to discipline someone for unauthorized treatment, discipline me. I requested Zara's help. I asked her to use human protocols because I knew they'd work better for my physiology. That's not true, Zara started to protest, but Finn silenced her with a look. It's true enough, he said firmly. And if the medical board wants to investigate, they'll find that my recovery exceeded all expectations, with no negative side effects, and complete patient satisfaction. Kethera stared at them both, her opalescent eyes reflecting her internal struggle. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter than before. The treatment was effective. It was miraculous, said Vex then, one of the younger Selenite healers. If human protocols can achieve these results, perhaps we should be studying them rather than dismissing them. The crowd began to disperse, medical staff returning to their duties with new topics of conversation. Kethera lingered for a moment, studying Zara with something that might have been respect. Your methods were unorthodox, she said finally. But your results were notable. Perhaps there is merit in collaborative approaches to interspecies medicine. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was acknowledgement. Zara nodded graciously. Thank you, healer Kethera. When they were finally alone, Finn pulled Zara into his arms, careful of his still healing injuries. That was incredibly stupid, she said, though she melted into his embrace. You could have gotten us both in serious trouble. Worth it, he replied, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. Besides, someone recently taught me that sometimes doing what's right matters more than doing what's expected. You're going to be trouble, aren't you, Finn O'Sullivan? The best kind, he promised, and when he kissed her properly, Zara knew she wouldn't have it any other way. Later, as they walked through the academy gardens, Finn's arm around her waist, Zara reflected on how much had changed in just a few days. She'd started the rotation hoping to learn about alien healing techniques. Instead, she'd learned something far more valuable, that the best medicine wasn't about superior technology or advanced protocols. It was about seeing patients as people, about caring enough to fight for what they needed, and about having the courage to challenge systems that forgot their humanity. So what happens now? Finn asked, stopping beside a fountain that sparkled with bioluminescent alien plants. Now we learn together, Zara replied, leaning into his warmth. Human medicine, alien techniques, whatever works best for our patients. Our patients? Well, she said with a smile that made his heart race, you're going to need a lot of follow-up care. And I'm the only healer here who really understands human physiology. Lucky me, Finn murmured, and kissed her again under the alien stars, both of them understanding that they'd found something rare and precious, a love built on respect, courage, and the unshakable belief that everyone deserved to be healed, body, mind, and heart. The Galactic Arts Pavilion gleamed like a crystal cathedral against the backdrop of 3 moons, its transparent walls offering a breathtaking view of the cosmos beyond. Inside, the elite of 12 worlds mingled among displays of the most celebrated art in known space, sculptures that defied physics, paintings that moved and breathed, musical compositions that could alter the listener's emotional state at the molecular level. Iris Delacroix stood before her modest display, feeling like a fraud in her simple black dress while surrounded by beings who wore light itself as fashion. Her paintings, traditional oils on canvas depicting Earth landscapes and human emotions, looked embarrassingly primitive next to the holographic masterpieces and quantum sculptures that surrounded them. And what do we have here? The voice was cultured, dripping with the kind of refined disdain that could cut glass. Zith Yen, the most influential art critic in the galaxy, approached her display with the lazy grace of a predator who'd already decided on his prey. The Nexarian critic was stunning in an otherworldly way, tall and ethereal, with skin that shifted between silver and gold depending on the light, and eyes that held the depth of ancient wisdom. His reputation preceded him, a positive review from Zith Yen could launch a career, while his criticism could end one before it began. Human art, he continued, studying her paintings with the expression one might reserve for examining a particularly distasteful insect. How quaint. A small crowd began to gather, drawn by the critic's presence. Iris felt her cheeks burn as she recognized several influential gallery owners and collectors among them, beings she'd hoped to impress, now watching her potential humiliation with polite interest. The technique is competent, I suppose, Zithyen said, leaning closer to her favorite piece, a painting of a sunset over the Pacific Ocean, rendered in warm golds and crimsons that had taken her months to perfect. But it lacks sophistication. Depth. The emotional resonance of truly evolved artistic expression. Evolved? Iris found her voice, though it came out smaller than she'd intended. My dear child, Zithyen's smile was patronizing, your species has been creating art for what, a few thousand years? We Nexarians have been perfecting artistic expression since before your son was born. This, he gestured dismissively at her paintings, is the artistic equivalent of cave paintings. Primitive attempts at beauty by a species still learning to see. Murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. Some were clearly agreeing with the critic, while others seemed uncomfortable with his harsh assessment. But no one spoke up in Iris's defense. These landscapes, Zithyen continued, warming to his subject, they're static, lifeless. True art should transcend the physical, should alter the viewer's consciousness, should reshape reality itself. This is merely documentation. Iris felt tears burning behind her eyes. 2 years of work, her life savings spent on academy fees and supplies, her dreams of proving that human art deserved recognition in the galactic community, all crumbling under the weight of one being's disdain. Furthermore, the critic added, the emotional content is disturbingly simplistic. Joy, sadness, longing, base emotions that any sentient being experiences. Where is the complexity? The philosophical depth? The transcendence of mortal concerns? Maybe that's exactly the point. The voice came from the back of the crowd, rough and warm with a slight accent that spoke of Earth's streets rather than its academies. The gathered beings turned to see who had dared interrupt the galaxy's most feared art critic. Diego Restrepo pushed through the crowd with casual confidence, a battered guitar case slung over his shoulder and wearing clothes that marked him as decidedly not part of high society, worn jeans, a simple white t-shirt, and a leather jacket that had seen better years. His dark hair was tousled, his brown eyes bright with something that might have been mischief or defiance. Excuse me. Zithyen's perfect features arranged themselves into an expression of shocked distaste. And you are? Nobody important, Diego replied with a grin that somehow managed to be both disarming and challenging. Just a street musician who knows something about art. Security, Zithyen began, but Diego was already moving. See, the thing about human art, Diego continued, setting down his guitar case and beginning to unpack his instrument, is that it's not trying to be something it's not. It's honest. Honest? The critic's laugh was like silver bells, beautiful and cold. Honesty is not a qualification for great art. Isn't it? Diego asked, tuning his guitar with practiced ease. Because when I look at these paintings, I don't see primitive documentation. I see a woman who fell in love with the world and wanted to share that love with anyone who'd look. Iris stared at him, her heart beginning to race for reasons that had nothing to do with embarrassment. This one, Diego said, pointing at her sunset painting while adjusting his guitar strap, doesn't just show a sunset. It shows the exact moment when day becomes night, when the whole world holds its breath in anticipation. It shows the feeling of standing on a beach, sand between your toes, salt air in your lungs, and realizing that you're part of something infinite. Poetic nonsense, Zithyen scoffed, but several people in the crowd were now looking at Iris's painting with new interest. Is it? Diego strummed a chord, testing the acoustics of the pavilion. Or maybe the problem isn't with human art. Maybe the problem is that we've forgotten what art is supposed to do. And what, pray tell, is that? The critic asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Make you feel something real. Diego's fingers found a melody, soft and haunting. Not just impressed, not just intellectually stimulated. Something true. As he began to play, something magical happened. The music seemed to bring Iris's paintings to life, not literally, like the holographic displays around them, but emotionally. The sunset scene seemed to pulse with warmth, the ocean painting appeared to ripple with Diego's rhythm, and a portrait of an elderly woman began to radiate the love and loss that had inspired it. "What you call primitive," Diego said, his voice weaving through the music, "I call essential. What you call simplistic, I call pure." This woman didn't paint these to impress critics or win awards. She painted them because she had to, because beauty demanded to be shared, because love needed to be expressed. The crowd was completely silent now, mesmerized by the interplay of music and visual art. Even Zithyen had stopped sneering, his ancient eyes fixed on the paintings with something approaching wonder. "You want transcendence." Diego's music swelled, his fingers dancing across the strings. "Look at this painting of rain on a window. Really look at it. Remember the last time you watched rain, the way it made you feel small and safe at the same time. Remember being a child, or feeling like one again." Iris watched in amazement as several beings in the crowd actually began to cry, not from sadness, but from recognition, from the sudden overwhelming awareness of their own capacity for simple, profound emotion. "You want philosophy?" Diego continued, his music shifting to match a painting of city lights reflected in a puddle. "Here's philosophy: beauty exists. Love matters. The small moments are the ones that define us. Every sunset is both an ending and a beginning. Every raindrop contains an ocean." A Selenite woman gasped audibly, her silver skin shimmering with tears. A gruff Draken trader found himself remembering the view from his childhood home. Even some of the Nexarian elite were wiping their eyes. "This," Diego said, letting his final chord ring in the pavilion's perfect acoustics, "is what human art does. It doesn't try to be clever or superior or revolutionary. It just tries to be true." The silence that followed was profound. Then, slowly, applause began, not the polite, restrained appreciation typical of high society events, but real, heartfelt recognition. The Selenite woman was the first to approach Iris's display, studying the paintings with new eyes. Others followed, and soon there was a genuine crowd around her work. Zithyen stood apart from the group, his perfect features showing the first cracks in his composure that anyone had ever witnessed. He approached Diego slowly, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. "You said you were nobody important," the critic said quietly. "I am," Diego replied, packing up his guitar. "Just a guy who plays music on street corners and falls in love with sunsets." "And with artists who paint them?" Zithyen asked, glancing meaningfully at Iris. Diego's smile was answer enough. The critic studied them both for a long moment, then turned back to Iris's paintings. "I believe," he said finally, his voice carrying clearly through the pavilion, "that I may have been hasty in my initial assessment." It wasn't quite an apology, but from Zithyen, it was revolutionary. As the evening wound down and the crowds dispersed, Iris found herself alone with Diego beside her paintings. 3 gallery owners had expressed serious interest in her work, and 2 collectors had made preliminary offers. Her art career, which had seemed over an hour ago, was suddenly full of possibility. "Thank you," she said softly, not quite able to meet his eyes. "What you did. I've never seen anything like it." "Hey," Diego said, gently tilting her chin up so she had to look at him. "I didn't do anything special. I just helped them see what was already there." "Why?" she asked. "You don't even know me." Diego's smile was warm and genuine. "Because your art made me feel something I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. Because watching you stand there, trying to be brave while that pompous ass tore apart your dreams, made me angrier than I've been in years. And because..." He hesitated, then forged ahead. "Because the moment I saw your paintings, I knew I was looking at the work of someone I could fall in love with." Iris felt her breath catch. "Diego. Too fast," he asked with a self-deprecating grin. Sorry, street musicians aren't known for subtlety. No, she said, stepping closer to him. Not too fast. Just, unexpected. The best things usually are, he replied, and when he kissed her, surrounded by her paintings and the infinite stars beyond the pavilion's crystal walls, Iris understood for the first time that true art wasn't about impressing critics or winning awards. It was about finding someone who saw the world the way you did, and choosing to create something beautiful together. 6 months later, the Galactic Arts Pavilion hosted its first-ever Humanity and Heart exhibition, featuring collaborative works that combined traditional human art with musical interpretation. The opening night performance, featuring the paintings of Iris Delacroix and the music of Diego Restrepo, drew audiences from across the galaxy. Zithien's review, published in every major art journal, contained a line that would be quoted for generations: "In learning to appreciate human art, we remember what it means to be moved by beauty rather than merely impressed by technique." Perhaps it is time for the sophisticated to learn from the sincere. But Iris and Diego barely noticed the critical acclaim. They were too busy creating, painting and music, laughter and love, simple moments that contained entire universes. Their art had brought them together, but it was their hearts that would keep them there, creating beauty from the raw material of everyday miracles. In the end, that was the most human thing of all, finding the extraordinary in the ordinary, and having the courage to share it with the world.